Like most robots in the Portal series, turrets are designed and programmed to try to end your existence as soon as they get the chance. But it is really impossible to stay angry at these little fellas. When they lose sight of you, they might say,
"Nap time."
Or even when you destroy them, they still come after your feelings by saying,
"I don't hate you."
Every time I destroy a turret, I feel bad about myself and all my life choices that led me to this point. They're just too likable, and that's precisely what the developers were after, turning the turret into one of their main branding strategies, even to the point of officially releasing something like this. But also involving them in many ways in the game's story. Turrets are also among the few items that the developers chose to be available to the players in the in-game puzzle maker. But those well versed in the puzzle community, they were almost always completely ignored. Sure, when firing up the level editor for the first time, just creating something with little depth, just for fun, many of us would be tempted to include a few turrets in our map, for the player to either knock over with a bit of dexterity at the start, or to quickly burn with a laser to enable access to the actual puzzle. But in the end, it is just fun to destroy turrets, right? They're not intended as a particularly in-depth puzzle element, right? As it turns out, it is most certainly possible to achieve very interesting and deep logical constructions using turrets as the kingpin of it all. And even to this day, people are still coming up with novel ways to incorporate turrets into their puzzles, making use of their truly unique properties. So without further ado, let's talk about the clever uses of turrets in Portal 2. Some viewers might be skeptical. A somewhat sentient sentry that shoots at you when you get in its view, that says funny things when you interact with it, and which explodes when toppled over. How can this reasonably be used in any serious way in any serious puzzle map? To give a very simple example that I've used before, in my map Block Logic, the exit is guarded by 3 turrets that the player must somehow destroy with the laser. But this is no easy feat, because in this bootstrapping puzzle, a term explained in one of my previous videos, by design it's quite challenging to collect both cubes in the main area while keeping the laser going, as interrupting it at any point will cause everything to shut down. The presence of the turrets here forces all the logical complexity. No funny business at all. Some might very reasonably object that the turrets could have been replaced by just a laser catcher here, and you know, they would be right. A similar way of having turrets guard the exit is used in Henke Muller's Dollhouse. And very quickly, if you want to avoid spoilers for the maps I will discuss during the video, and want to try them for yourself first, as always I've left links to the maps in the description below. If you were to attempt a similar strategy of getting rid of the turrets as in the previous example, you would be having a hard time. Namely, to turn on the laser, either the player or the cube must be on the button, and therefore it's impossible for the player to hold the cube and aim the laser at the turrets. Instead, we may pre-place a laser cube facing one of the turrets and then stand on the button ourselves. Do this twice and the path to the exit is free. A laser catcher would not have worked in the same way as the turrets here. So blowing up turrets seemed to hold some power as a way of achieving permanent progress. But a common mistake in many maps made by inexperienced designers is to make the puzzle much too linear, which turns into more of a sequence of chores than an actual puzzle. Those who have spent any time playing some of the most popular or most recent front page maps will undoubtedly recognize the type of map with logic that goes something like this. First, the player presses this button, and then this panel flips so they can get a cube, and then they put it on the button to reach this button, which turns on a laser, and then we activate the catcher so the player can reach this button, etc. So what is it that makes these maps so linear and prevents them from stumping the player for longer than a second or two? For one, it is the overuse of permanent buttons, or permabuttons for short. that guides the logic into a single, very clear path. They represent fixed points in the solution with permanent progress. The player does not have to think about the bigger picture. All they have to do is focus on achieving this clear, intermediary goal, greatly reducing the map's complexity. It's much easier to figure out 5 2-step goals than it is to solve one 10-step sequence. In addition, a good way of measuring complexity in your Portal 2 puzzles, something that is mentioned by countless puzzle-solving veterans in the comments of difficult maps, is the amount of reuse the test elements enjoy in your puzzles. If a funnel is used only once for an obvious purpose, there is little thinking required to work out how to use it to your advantage. However, if the funnel is required to cross many different gaps or move cubes around the map, maybe sometimes having to switch polarity depending on the move, it becomes much less clear precisely which purposes the funnel can fulfill. Perma buttons by design are single-use elements and thus reduce complexity. It is generally considered good practice to limit the number of single or little-use elements as much as possible. This is not to say that having these kinds of permanent points of progress is always a bad thing. There's nothing wrong, for example, with making the player work a bit to obtain a cube that they can then use to their advantage until they reach the exit. But even in this case, the progress might not even be truly permanent. For example, if the cube is destroyed because the player made a wrong move, or because the solution requires the cube to be destroyed at some point so that the player has to retrieve it later once again. It is generally advisable to have as few of these logical bottlenecks as possible. The greater the number of moves between any two obvious necessary puzzle states, the more complex the sequence or puzzle becomes. Of course, if your layout allows for 2 completely different sequences of comparable complexity, using a perma-button construction to force both can often result in very interesting maps as well. As an example of this, consider the map Not So Fast by Libby Bapa, which for all intents and purposes is a no elements map, as discussed in my previous video, except that it uses a group of turrets as an elegant substitute for the sometimes considered somewhat inelegant perma button, which allows it to use the tag No Connections in the map title instead. Here, there are 2 very different sequences of links possible in this layout. One of the 2 puts the player on this catwalk, allowing access to the upper area from which the turrets can safely be taken out, and the other one allows the player to reach the exit. By introducing the turrets, the same layout yields twice the amount of puzzle, which more than justifies their presence. But turrets can be used as more than just perma buttons. In fact, they can contribute to the logic without the need of them even being destroyed at any point at all. Consider, for example, Evade by Galvatron. Here, all we need to do is reach the exit with a cube, and we are given both a funnel and a light bridge. Sounds easy, right? The slight problem is these turrets guarding the path to the exit. There's no way for us to reach or destroy them, so they are there to stay. But how do we get past them without being torn to shreds by their bullets? We will need to go fast. Real fast. Fortunately, we have orange gel at our disposal, so we deduce that we must coat the light bridge in orange gel to allow us to quickly run past the turrets to the exit. And to do that, we need a funnel too. And all this logic is forced just by introducing the turrets there. And on top of that, it is difficult to imagine a better way of achieving the same logic using any other element. The turrets were properly put there. But in my opinion, the uses and unique properties of turrets really begin to shine when the pre-placed turrets are replaced by a slightly different construction. A turret dropper. Just like how it generally is a bad idea to have dropperless cubes, adding a dropper for the turret, which can be achieved with the mod B mod, often leads to highly interesting logic. It takes away the single-use property that seemed so innate to the process of destroying turrets and turns it into something that allows for much more complex and deep logic by allowing the turrets to be destroyed or reused multiple times. A concrete example comes from Turrets of Time by Nerdling Nation. This map features a turret dropper, and the turret auto respawns. Just destroying it seems to have no effect, it just comes right back. So what do? Indeed, we can go to grab the turret by hand and turn it away from the action. This way, it no longer respawns, nor can it cause any further harm. So are we then done? Well, to reach the exit, we must ascend these 2 pistons. But how do we activate this piston while standing on top of it? And the answer is quite subtle. We must actually use a null portal, about which you can learn more in this video. Indeed, clearing our portals, our task becomes very easy, and we can take the lift up. However, we still need to make it to the exit, and for this we have to deactivate and then activate the laser receiver again. But how do we achieve this? We cannot seem to see any of the necessary portal surfaces. And the solution is very creative and rather surprising. Namely, we must turn to an old friend, you guessed it, the turret. If we put it directly in between this surface and the cube, something really magical happens after ascending the first piston. We can change our portal to this other surface, and the turret will block the laser while it's being destroyed, bringing the piston down. We step onto it, and after the turret has exploded, the laser receiver will activate again, taking us to the exit. A truly brilliant map with many subtle and creative moves, all involving the turret. But there are even more crazy moves that one can pull off using the unique properties of turrets, 2 of which are supremely illustrated in the phenomenal thought insertion by Mausgeburt. This map too features a turret dropper and a single laser cube. And we can collect the laser cube, but we can't really take it out of this area because it does not fit through the jail bars. We can place it on this cross, however, and aim it at the turret, which will now be continuously destroyed and will respawn. This may seem convenient, but like this, we cannot really pick up the turret to put it somewhere safe like before. To do this, we first put our portal here, and then the laser take out the turret instead, without any help from the cube. Now, moving our portal allows us to collect the turret, finally making this part of the map safe to walk around in. But why would we collect the turret? Well, remember how the cube was stuck? It auto respawns, and its dropper is very close to this ledge. If we can somehow respawn the cube from here, we could catch it and take it out of the area it is stuck in. But how do we trigger the respawn from here? The trick is truly genius. There's a suspicious spot of orange gel here, making the floor all slippery. If we put the cube right on the edge and the turret right next to it, watch what happens when we destroy the turret. Your eyes do not deceive you. The blast from the turret is enough to make the cube slide over the edge, dropping it in the goo and triggering the respawn. Finally, we must reach the exit. And there's this faith plate, but it just sends us straight up. We get nowhere near the exit. So how do we cross this huge gap? And the answer is again, surprising. And somewhat crazy, but it works with perfect consistency and it makes perfect sense. In hindsight. The trick is to turn the turret around, facing the exit. If we then climb the cube to reach the faith plate, all we have to do is step on it. The turret will notice us and will start shooting, violently blasting us backwards by the momentum of its bullets. And this force is great enough to launch us all the way to the exit, without killing us, completing this crazy yet brilliant map. So yeah, next time you see turrets in a puzzle map, do not immediately write it off as poorly designed or silly. Even though it's not easy, as with most of the more subtle logical moves or concepts in a world of challenging Portal 2 community maps, it is definitely possible and also certainly worth it to put in the effort to use turrets in a highly interesting and unique way to instantly make your map a lot more memorable. There are some properties and setups that are unique or most natural to turrets, so allowing yourself to consider using them even when setting out to make a serious logical test chamber might be just what you need to get past certain creative blocks we all inevitably experience during the design process. Good luck and have fun mapping! But yeah, that's all for me for now. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it a lot. And I hope to see you all again in the next video. Bye!